Hello, everyone. This is Michael Govier from the Cinema 9 podcast, and you are listening to Pop Goes Your World.
If you haven't already, subscribe on iTunes. And while you're there, please leave us a rating and review.
And now it's time for our feature presentation.
I'm Chris McBrien, and the pop culture from Generation X is everything to me.
And I'm Derek Myers, and I'm here to educate Chris on the great pop culture of today's generation.
Episode 298, Third Installments. Chris McBrien along with Derek Myers, and this is Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations. This week we thought it might be interesting to take a look at our favorite third installments in movies, so like the third film in a set of sequels or movie series. But before we get to that, Derek, what is new in the world of pop culture for you?
Hey Chris, how you doing?
I'm good.
Good. How's your summer vacation been?
Oh, my summer vacation is now over. I'll get to that in a second.
Oh boy. Okay. I had a chance to take in some pop culture in the last week or two.
Good.
And I got a little bit of everything. I got some TV, some movies, some documentaries. I even got a book and
pop culture smorgasbord here.
Yeah,
nice.
a little bit of everything. I'm going to start with the book. So, on recommendation from a lot of my nerd friends, they know I like science fiction. They recommended I read a book called Hyperion by author Dan Simmons. It was released in 1989. And it was considered, one of the best sci-fi books that year. It won the Hugo Award for Best Novel, which is like the Oscars of science fiction stuff. Excuse me. It's also one of these books that, because it's so beloved by so many sci-fi nerds, myself included, they're always talking about, like, are we going to turn it into a movie? Are we going to turn it into a TV series? And they haven't done that yet, but they've been kicking it around. But the latest rumor is that Bradley Cooper apparently currently has the rights and is considering turning this either into a movie, a series, prestige TV. Is he going to star in it? Is he going to direct it? Is he going to produce it? Those details are up in the air, but apparently he's got his finger on the pulse of this one. So as a fan of Bradley Cooper, I thought, okay, well, maybe I should read this book. And yeah, it was pretty decent. I enjoyed it for the most part. I mean, it's it's from 1989, so there's some of the way the story is told is a little bit different, but it sort of mirrors the Canterbury Tales by Chaucer, where it's 7 characters going on a journey, and each chapter is them explaining why they're going on this journey, because they're all going to the same place for different reasons. And it's basically this interesting mishmash of the stories, and think of something like Pulp Fiction, where you get this story that's told out of order from different perspectives, but by the end all the pieces start to fall together and you realize how some of these characters have interlocking stories. And that's pretty much what happens here. By the end you realize that there's commonality between all the stories, and some of the characters in one story are effectively also in one of the other stories. So it's an interesting exercise. I listened to it as a book on audio. It was like 20 hours, so it took forever to get through it, but I did. I would give it sort of a soft recommendation if you're a science fiction fan, but anyway, so that's been that. Then I had a chance to go to the theater. I think I mentioned on the last podcast I had a chance to watch Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yes, you did mention that.
Yeah, so one of my friends who's a really big comic book nerd, unfortunately wasn't able to see that film in the first couple of weeks, so he was ready to go see it and asked me if I wanted to go again. And since I enjoyed it so much the first time, I did, and let me tell you, I enjoyed it just as much a second time through. It was really good. I had no problems paying to see that one a second time. Huh. But then what we did was we stayed at the theater, and we also saw the new Alien movie called Alien Romulus.
Oh, I didn't even know there was a new one of those.
Yeah, so this is, again, I'll keep it spoiler free for people who maybe haven't seen it but are thinking about catching it. It is part of the established Alien franchise. The story actually takes place between the original Alien movie and the second Aliens movie. But there are none of the characters. Like, it's not like, oh, well, this is so and so as a young person or so and so as an old man, and none of that. It's just they've set the story in the world that's sort of already been established, and they make a point of sort of giving you a sense of where it falls in that timeline, and it's very much a thriller kind of movie. I listened to a podcast. They described it as like a haunted house kind of movie. The idea is these scavengers basically go onto the space station looking for parts, and it turns out there's some aliens on there. Excuse me, and then there's sort of a combination of trying to escape from the space station but also getting what they came for and also not getting killed by the aliens. So it was pretty good. I mean, it's I think it's a good sort of reboot / reimagining of this franchise, and I'm sure they're going to make more of them. It's making some pretty decent money. It's getting some good reviews, but I think leaning into that sort of horror movie side of it and worrying less about the science fiction is probably what this franchise needs. So yeah, no, it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. I would definitely recommend it. And then the last real movie I saw was a classic from 1974.
Oh, I like where this is going.
Starring Burt Reynolds.
Oh,
The Longest Yard.
Yes, nice.
Now, I've never seen this version of this movie. I watched the Adam Sandler version when it came out, and it was garbage.
Yeah.
But I honestly expected it to be garbage. And but anyway, I had a chance to go back and
Sandler's like, I think he either does something really, really good or really, really bad. There's no in the middle for that guy.
Yeah. It's but anyway, I had a chance to finally go back and watch this movie,
What'd you think?
And I really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I thought it really held up considering what I mean, obviously it takes place in the 70s. It is what it is. But no, it was a good movie. The story made sense. The character development made sense. It wasn't like you could tell when they were making this movie, they were taking it seriously. Whereas the Sandler one, they're like, let's just make it into a goofball comedy, which I think was a big mistake. But again, they didn't ask me for my opinion, and it made a whole bunch of money. So, but no, this one was really good. If you haven't seen this one, Burt Reynolds, again, great performance. Really, really, he has. So he had such a charisma, such a screen presence. I mean, he's so good looking in the first place, but just you can really tell that he's actually quite good at his job.
Oh, yeah. I think people overlook it because they think of like Smokey and the Bandit and Stroke Race and Cannonball Run. But before all that Hal Needham stuff, he's a pretty darn good actor. Go back and watch Deliverance. Like, he's pretty good.
Yeah, no, he was quite good in this.
Yeah.
I did notice when I watched this, though, I recognized a lot of the other performers in this film, even though I maybe didn't know their names. And the one that's jumped out at me the most was the guy who plays the dad in Teen Wolf.
Oh, yes. I can't remember his name. I know who you mean, though. Yeah,
the scene where like Michael J. Fox is in the bathroom, he turns into the werewolf and he opens the door and there's dad all in full wolf makeup. That guy.
Yes.
He's in this movie as like Burt Reynolds' cellmate, and he like helps him get the football team organized and stuff. Yeah, no, I was like, there's a few other performers. I'm like, oh, I recognize that guy. But so anyway, if you could find a copy of this, and believe me, I had a hard time finding a copy of this, but it was quite good. It actually held up real well. I was really glad I gave it 2 hours. And honestly, the first half is all about just him going to prison and trying to figure out what's what, and the second half is a football game. It's literally like them shooting a football game for 45 to 50 minutes of the movie. So no, it was really, really good. It really held up well. And then the last thing, I finally had a chance to watch a documentary.
For 40 days and 40 nights, he watches documentaries. He likes to learn about the world. It's Derek's Documentaries. Derek's Documentaries.
Educate us, my friend.
All right. I had a chance to watch another installment of ESPN's 30 for 30 documentary series.
Oh yeah,
it's going to be, it's going to be sports related in some way, and this one you could argue is sports adjacent is probably the best way to describe it.
Okay.
And it was about the internet sensation Dude Perfect.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that a couple weeks ago that it was coming.
Yeah, the documentary is called A Really Long Shot, and it's about the 6 guys that put the Dude Perfect team together. They started as a very small group of friends that were posting videos on YouTube before YouTube was really a thing, and then a couple of videos went viral. So you could argue some of the first viral videos ever, and it just ballooned up from there, and now they are a $400 million franchise.
Yep.
And
I took my kids to see them in Toronto, if you remember, like last year.
I remember you telling me about it, and I was thinking to myself, "Who the hell is Dude Perfect?"
And then the one of them came into the audience and had a football, and I high-fived him, and my kids then thought I was cool because I high-fived. I'm like, "Yeah, man, I'm in good with Corey," and they're like, "No, Dad, it's like Kobe." They got their name wrong, but okay, whatever. But yeah.
Anyway, the documentary runs 90 minutes. It's fantastic. Like, I didn't really know much about these guys. I've seen some of their videos. I didn't know that's who they were. I've just seen, because it's like, the guy will stand up on a building and throw a football across a freeway or something, and you're like, there's no way he's hitting that target, and then he hits the target, and you're like, oh my god, it's amazing. It's like So
of course, they did a million takes, but they got it.
Well, and that's part of what they talk about in this series. But it was it was a documentary about their lives, who they are, how they got together, how they started it, how the trials and tribulations of whether or not they wanted to do it professionally or actually get real jobs, because they all graduated from college, so they all have college degrees, and they were like, let's give it a try, because we'll regret it if we don't. And the thing just took off. The right place, right time, right idea. And it seems like the guys just in general have a really good positive attitude on life. They're, good outlook on life, good family guys. They're got strong Christian beliefs. They're constantly they do the prayer in the morning. They're always like, we want to thank the Lord for this day and all that stuff. And you always see them saying grace before the meals. And it's like, hey man, if that's what does it for you, great. But so anyway, this documentary, really, really good. If you have a chance to find it, it's part of the 30 for 30 series. It's called Dude Perfect, a really long shot. And if you're here in Canada, it was on TSN. I just went into the thing and set up my PVR, and I believe they are going to probably run it again. But fantastic, 10 out of 10. Give it a watch.
Nice. So that's everything? That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Oh,
and we went to see a couple of concerts. I'm going to be honest, I don't even remember what they were. I had such a whirlwind week. I'll talk about those next week.
That's fine. I got something for you that's along those lines. So I mentioned I'm back to work now, and my summer holidays are over, but I had one hell of a vacation, bud. I mentioned recently how my wife and I went to Cape Cod, and I made it to Martha's Vineyard, which is my new favorite place on earth, by the way. I just love it there. And I visited all the Jaws movie locations, and I went to John Belushi's gravesite, and I did all that fun stuff. But I did another thing too. My wife and I went out to a concert, so to kind of piggyback on what you were saying. Okay. So we drove to Detroit, and we saw Journey, who opened up for Def Leppard. Now Journey, I was like, they only have one founding member, which is the guitarist Neil Schon, and their vocalist that they have, he's very good. Like, they got themselves a great vocalist. But for me, Journey is Steve Perry. Like, that's what I think of when I think of Journey, is him and his voice. And although this guy was good, he wasn't, Steve Perry. So Journey opened up for Def Leppard, but that wasn't the reason why I went to the concert, because there was a band that opened up for them, and it was the Steve Miller Band.
Nice.
Oh man, I don't know about you. I've loved the Steve Miller Band my whole life. And the reason why we had to go all the way over to Detroit to see it, because although they're touring in Canada, so Journey and Def Leppard are touring in Canada, but Steve Miller Band isn't coming with them. When they come in, I think it was Cheap Trick.
Cheap Trick.
Yeah. And I have no desire to see Cheap Trick whatsoever. So I wanted to go. So my wife got us tickets, and we drove all the way down to Detroit, and we saw that. So we're there. Steve Miller Band comes on, and they're just like performing in front of this like white sheet. Like, they had no like setup, and my wife's like, why are they in front of a white sheet? I said, because when they pull it down, that'll be Journey's drum set and everything will be there. That's why. And so they just came out in front of a white sheet and played. And you know what? I could have left after that. They were done. I was like, okay, I'm done. I could leave. Like, it was that good. I just loved it. And like, not everybody was digging Steve Miller Band like I was. Like, at one point, he was playing Serenade, which is one of my favorite songs. And people are just kind of like walking around. I'm like, good. Stop, like, listen to him, it's so good. But then we got on a bus, and we came back across the border, and we're sitting at the back of the bus, and it's all older people, as you can imagine, but there's one young couple sitting beside us. They must have been 20 or 21. They were young. And so one of the other older people goes, okay, so who did you like the best at the concert? And the young guy goes, no question, hands down, Steve Miller Band. I'm like, oh my God, nice. I didn't expect him to say that. I'm like, wow, I said, first of all, you're right, but I did not expect that out of you because you're so young. He's like, my dad played it the whole time I grew up. He goes, so I just always loved it. He goes, I could have left after that. I'm like, oh my God, I have a new friend. So it was great. No, I really, really I love Steve Miller Band. When I was a teenager, I had a cassette of Steve Miller Band Greatest Hits, and I played it in my car. And I played it so much that I wore the cassette out. Derek, back in those days, when we had cassette tapes, if you played them enough, it would stretch out, and eventually it just wouldn't work. Right. You had to play it a lot, though, for that to happen. I did. I wore out Steve Miller Band Greatest Hits. So I bought another one, and I wore it out. And then by the time that I wore out the second cassette, we had switched over to CDs, so I had to buy a CD of it. So, but I love Steve Miller Band. So, no, it was great. But that's what I did. And then, I also got this.
Here's your dad joke of the week.
So, Derek, I thought since we're looking at third installments that I would do a sequel dad joke for you.
Okay.
All right. So, Derek, have you seen the sequel to the movie Constipation?
I didn't know they had a movie, Constipation.
Well, nobody's seen it because number 2 didn't come out yet.
Oh, man. When you said you had a number 3 joke, I knew it had to have something to do with Peeps and Poops.
It went with number 2. Know what I'm saying?
I can't wait to go home and watch Shrek 2 tonight.
Know what I'm saying?
Really? That's all you were thinking about the whole movie?
Know what I'm saying? Know what I'm saying?
It was fine.
If you don't feed the dogs, you're going to die. Know what I'm saying?
Oh, my God.
Oh, man, I got to leave for work or I'm going to be late. Know what I'm saying?
Yeah!
Okay, Derek, I got a joke for you. Know what I'm saying?
Oh, my God. I forgot how good this was.
Know what I'm saying? Okay, so we're going to look at some third installments. I'm not sure how we settled on this topic originally, but I mean, you and I have talked about sequels a lot here on this show. And, especially with movies these days, everything seems to be a sequel or another entry in the franchise or whatever it is. So we looked at our favorite sequels on a past episode, but this time we decided to look at third installments. And right. I got to say, man, it was actually pretty fun going back and thinking about some of these movies, like doing the research, it brought back a lot of movies for me that I hadn't thought about for a long time. So that was a fun exercise in my books. But,
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, do you want to preface anything before, we get started on this topic? Do you want to just put some parameters on things or just talk about it a bit?
I do, yeah. That's where I was going to just jump in and say that. So when we originally sort of kicked this around, you specifically said, I want to do it as third installments. And I thought, that's an interesting way to describe it. Not, I want to look at it as part 3. Mm-hmm. I want to look at it as the third part of a trilogy. And so that actually got me thinking about how to approach this. And so I decided I wanted to avoid the third part of a trilogy for any film series that was conceived as a trilogy or that was part of a longer, I'm thinking for example, Harry Potter is based, there's 7 books that turned into 8 movies. So you could say, I want to talk about part 3 of Harry Potter. But I mean, again, that was conceived as a larger story, part of the thing. It definitely had sort of the beats were mapped out. Lord of the Rings, another one, based on a trilogy of books, became a trilogy of movies, fantastic movies. And again, sorry, I may be stepping on some of yours because I don't know what's on your list, but I kind of think Lord of the Rings probably a safe one to talk about. But again, the third Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, fantastic movie. You talk about the best part 3s, that's going to make a lot of people's lists. But in my mind, that was sort of a cheat. Of course it's going to be great. You had these 2 fantastic movies to build up all this stuff, and you had to resolve everything by the third movie. So when I was putting my list together, I tried to avoid movies that were clearly supposed to be the third and final part of a story, because I felt that the reason some of those are so great is because you've already had 2 movies to get to know all the characters and all the drama and all the story and all the history that comes with them. And in the third one, you had that finality to it. Now, you get some of them where the third part was so great and they're like, we can make more money, let's put out a part 4. Or, hey, it's been 20 years. You know what we can do? We can revisit this franchise. Think the Star Wars prequels, right? They're like, you had the original Star Wars trilogy, and they're like, we can make a lot more money if we make more of these. So again, you've got some movies where, yes, they are part of a defined trilogy, and then they've made more movies after that, whether it be prequels, sequels, spin-offs, or whatever. But what I tried to do was find movies that, it was a third part. For some of my picks, it's almost like a little bit of a dotted line to get to that third part. It's not even so much that it's like, you must see part 1, you must see part 2, and here's part 3. I tried to look for movies that were more part 3 as an organic exercise, and again, we'll talk about a little bit as it goes through. And that's not to say that I couldn't have picked the third part of a trilogy, but for me personally, I just thought that sort of seemed like the low-hanging fruit, and there was some that are very obviously the top of the list, and I just thought, you know what, we don't have to revisit too many of those because we've talked about a lot of them on this show before. Again, I don't want to step on your list, so I don't want to throw some honorable mentions out just yet because I think that might sort of spoil it. But we can always sort of, right before we hit our number ones, just maybe throw in a couple of mentions of ones that we, this is why this wasn't on the list. So
Sure. For me, as always, I went with my personal favorites. So it's not about going with the quote unquote best movies for me. These are my personal favorites. So some of them may or may not be considered bad movies, actually, but that's okay because that's what I want to do. So why don't you kick us?
Same with me. Same with me. Some of mine are like
Good.
awful movies, but I was like,
that's what it's all about.
I enjoyed this third part, so I'm talking about it.
Yeah, that's the way I took it too. So
I think the first two on my list are going to definitely fall into that camp.
Cool.
So.
The first one on my list will probably blow you away. But why don't you start us off? Number 5 of your favorite third installments.
All right.
What do you
got? This is going to be a little bit of a hot take.
Okay.
My first one I want to talk about is Alien 3. And maybe that's just recency bias because I just saw Alien Romulus this week. But I've been going back and rewatching the other Alien movies. Now, let me start by saying that Alien 3 is definitely not anywhere as good as the first or second movie in this, we'll call it a franchise. Mm-hmm. Because they've made so many of them. But it's also not supposed to be like, hey, we conceived 3 movies and this is the end of it. Now, when they made it, they tried to make to settle it and be like, this is it, we're not making any more of these. But then I think Alien Resurrection did a good job of continuing this story. One of the things I really liked about this Alien 3 movie is you still have the idea of the alien creature that's hunting these unsuspecting victims, but I really just like the concept of where the story took place, that it's supposed to be this prison planet that was at one point like a mining operation that has long since been abandoned, and it's like, you know what, we're just going to put our worst criminals down here and they can do whatever the hell they want. And so it was not even so much the alien component of it as much as just the setting of this movie to me really sort of made your brain work a little bit and go, oh, that's something I don't think I remember ever seeing before in any other movie, and I like the way they're going with this. And the fact that you also have a director, a very young David Fincher. This was one of his earlier movies, certainly not his best movie, but you could see some of the grains and the kernels of like, this guy really knows how to make a movie. Like, there's obviously, from what I've read, there was a lot of like studio interference. They wanted him to tone things down and pare things back and cut scenes out of the movie. And so, this movie gets ragged on a lot as being, the worst one in the Alien franchise. I don't know if I'd go that far. It's a fun film. It's it's a horror movie, as fun as a horror movie can be. But no, I actually really like this one, and it's not one that I liked the first time right out of the gate. Honestly, I didn't see it in the theater. I saw it on home video when it came out. But the Alien franchise is one of my wife's favorite films, and so I've watched this a few times with her, and I've learned to appreciate it more and more over the years. So again, definitely not one of the best part 3s ever made, but it's one of the ones that I really enjoy. So third installment of Alien 3 from 1992.
All right, my number 5. So I always think that I'm very lucky to have grown up back in the 80s. Man, it was quite the time. So I, like many other Gen Xers out there, watched movies that were so inappropriate for my age. Man, I used to go to the movie theater and watch stuff I never should have been allowed to watch. But that's just the way it was back then, I guess. So I remember watching the movie Porky's on the movie channel. I was probably 12 when I saw it. Mm-hmm. And the sequel came out, Porky's 2, the next day or whatever. It was dumb. But when the third movie came out in 1985, I was 15. And I got into the theater to see it. I shouldn't have because it was rated R. But I remember me and my friend went to go in, and the guy's like, oh, you guys can't come in. You have to be here with an adult. I'm like, oh, yeah, that guy up there in front, that's my uncle. Oh, okay. And then we went. Some guy, I didn't know who he was. I just said he was my uncle. So we went in and we saw Porky's Revenge. So that's number 5 on my list. So in the first movie, if you've seen it, I'm sure you have, the guys destroy Porky's strip club. Porky, he's not even in the second movie. But in the third installment, Porky now has a riverboat. And it's got like a strip club and a casino in the riverboat. And then the guys' basketball team at school, they're winning a bunch of games. And I think at one point, the girls agree to have an orgy with the boys if they win in the semifinals. But of course, because it's Porky's. But anyway, they make it to the state finals, and Porky wants them to throw the game so he can win a bunch of money, like betting on the other team. And, the guys agree, but then they end up like making his boat crash into this drawbridge and they destroy it. It's not a very good movie, needless to say, as you can tell by the synopsis that I just gave. But let me tell you, as a teenager, kind of growing up in the 80s, going to see this movie in the movie theater, it was a big deal for me. It's something I always remember. And even though the movie pretty much sucked, it's just a personal favorite. So I put it on my list. I remember the producers spent like 90% of the film's budget building Porky's riverboat. And then they just destroy it. So anyway, Porky's Revenge is my number 5. On to your number 4, my friend.
Well, but Chris, one of the reasons I really love to do this podcast is I always learn things from you. And today I learned that they made a 3rd movie in the Porky's franchise. I had no idea they made a part 3.
I get that from listeners a lot where they're like, man, I just learned something new or whatever. Like, I didn't know that or whatever. But that's pretty big. You didn't even know that the movie was even made. So that's a pretty big one.
Have you ever heard the thing that your brain only has so much room to hold so many facts? And whenever you learn something new, you forget something you already learned. Yeah. So I hope
Porky's Revenge just doesn't fit in there.
Porky's Revenge now just made it into my brain. I hope I didn't forget how to do CPR or something actually important.
Exactly. The Heimlich maneuver or something.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to just sort of continue on with what you did here. So my next pick is a personal favorite. You're going to be shocked when you hear what this is. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, The Dream Warriors.
I did not expect this. You don't even like horror movies. That's a shock. I don't.
But when I was younger, the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, for some reason, my peer group, we just loved it. I think just because we didn't really find it scary as much as we just thought it was, like this over-the-top thriller kind of movie.
The first one kind of was. It was kind of creepy and scary. But then after that, it just got campy, I think.
And I think the idea of like him with the glove, the razor glove and stuff is just, it was an interesting character. So anyway, this is one that, so it's from 1987. We were able to get the first 2 on video because obviously I was still pretty young at this point. And so when this 3rd one came out, we were still too young to see it in the theater, but one of our parents thankfully rented it for us because parents didn't really care. And we watched the crap out of this movie over and over and over again. It actually had a couple of decent performers in it. Patricia Arquette is the main hero or heroine in this one. And no, it's pretty good. It's honestly, I haven't seen it in a long, long time. And when I was doing some Google searches for part 3s, popular part 3 films from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, like this one popped up a few times. I'm like, oh yeah, like I really remember this one being a big deal when we were younger. It was one of those movies for some reason that we were just able to watch over and over again. I think maybe someone had it was on one of the pay channels and someone recorded it because we definitely had a copy for a while. And then I remember when the 4th Nightmare on Elm Street came out. By then we were old enough to see them in the theater. But this one always seemed to be the one that everyone's like, this is the first one was definitely the best one. But then this 3rd installment seemed to be the one that everyone was like, well, after you watch the first one, just skip part 2 and go right to part 3, and that's it. Like, it doesn't get any better than this. It's again, it was still written, or at least Wes Craven still had a writing credit on it, but also Frank Darabont, who went on to direct Shawshank Redemption, he also has a writing credit on this. Yeah. So I mean, the story was pretty decent. Like it actually is better than you might remember. So if you're a fan of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, you haven't seen this one in a while, go back and give it a watch. I think you're going to find that you're going to be pleasantly surprised by how it holds up. So this is my number 4 pick.
Oh, all right. So one thing I've mentioned in the past, I'm sure, that I've made it sort of my mission, or at least one of my missions in life, to make my son watch a bunch of older movies. Porky's wasn't one of them, by the way. I don't want my wife to kill me, after all. Okay. So, but I did have him watch Austin Powers' International Man of Mystery this summer. We watched it, and he really liked it. And so then he knew that there were sequels, so I had to indulge him and put him on. So I don't really like the second one all that much. The Spy Who Shagged Me, it was just
blasphemy.
Okay.
I was literally watching it this afternoon. It was on my my 90s channel.
Yeah, it was okay. But the 3rd installment is the best of the 3, I think. So I'm talking about Gold Member.
That's a hot take, man.
I know. So my son and I just watched it recently, so maybe the recency bias is there. But I got to tell you, I remember enjoying it when I first saw it, but watching it again, oh my God, it was funny as hell. Like totally stupid. Sure, it's juvenile, but that's the point, right? So my son and I watching it together, it was just so fun. Like the scene with Fat Bastard when he's like smelling his farts. And then when he first sees Beyonce, he's like, oh, look at this filly. Oh, do you think I'm sexy? And it was like me and him were both just laughing and laughing. And the opening scene alone with Tom Cruise and Gwyneth Paltrow, and it's got like Danny DeVito as Mini-Me. Like that movie had me laughing and laughing all over again. So I think it's the best movie in the trilogy. Bit of a hot take, that's for sure. But it's number 4 on my list. So Goldmember.
Yeah, and Michael Caine was so good in that. Again, small part, but just
so
my
funny.
God.
When the scene when he asked Mini-Me to take his pants down and he describes I just can't even. I can't repeat it here, but oh man, it was so funny. Even my son and I were just laughing. Oh my God. Don't tell your mother you watch this. But anyway, okay, you're number 3.
All right, my number 3, we're going to go with a solid pick that I think a lot of people would have on their list, and that's Die Hard with a Vengeance with Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson. Again, Die Hard is a classic, Christmas classic. Everyone's seen Die Hard many times, I'm sure. Die Hard with a Vengeance, came out in 95, and the second Die Hard movie was okay, but I think it wasn't received as well as people had hoped. So when this third one came out, I think a lot of people were just like, whatever. But it is really good, and I've probably seen this third one almost as much as I've seen the first one. Samuel L. Jackson brings a new energy to this film, and it's really it's a combination of just a cop movie, but it's also, I like the idea that it's a detective story where it's like there's some sort of a mystery going on throughout the thing, and you have the villain in Simple Simon who's like having them run around the city and solve puzzles and stuff, and I like that component of it. That's not the biggest piece of the movie, but it's an important piece of the movie, and just having these two characters forced to work together that literally hate each other from the outset and are constantly trying to manipulate each other. And then obviously at the end, they have to come together to fulfill a common goal. It's sort of like you would normally have these two kinds of characters together in a comedy, but to see them together in like an action movie, I think worked really well. And the fact that it was still taken seriously. It wasn't like a 48 hours kind of thing where it's like, you get the wisecracking fast talk and, I'm going to throw in some jokes here and there. It's like, no, these are two serious actors doing serious movies. And there were some funny parts, but it was not a comedy by any stretch of the imagination. But no, it's really good. I really enjoyed this one. And, after this, they made a bunch of crappy Die Hard sequels on and on and on, and they got worse and worse and worse because, why not make a sequel when there's money on the table? But Die Hard with a Vengeance is an outstanding third installment in a film franchise. So
I've never seen it.
It's my pick. Oh my God, we may have this on the podcast then. It's really good.
Like obviously, I've seen the first one. I watch it every year at Christmas with my wife, and the second one I went to see in the movie theater when it came out. But I think by the time that this thing came out, you said it was like 95, right? I was like, I'm kind of done with this. Yeah,
And I think a lot of people were like that.
Yeah. And so maybe that's why I just never had a desire.
And this was out just before Pulp Fiction. So this is like a lot of people maybe didn't Samuel Jackson wasn't sort of the household name at this point yet. Mm-hmm. So this comes out, and then same year he comes out with Pulp Fiction. So that sort of overshadowed this from the Samuel Jackson of it all. But no, this was one that they used to run it on cable a lot. So it would be on over and over again. And no, it's really good. It's really strong. I really enjoyed it. So makes my list. Number 3.
Cool. All right. My number 3 is another one that I had my son watch with me. It was one of my favorites when I was a kid. And that's Rocky 3. So
good pick.
It introduced the world to Mr. T, right? That was the first time he made an appearance. So that alone makes it a classic, I guess. But if you look back, the first Rocky is very gritty. And it's actually a really good movie. I mean, won Best Picture in 1976. But the second one, too, was a lot like the first one. It was kind of grittier. But this third one is a lot more slick. It's just, it's produced a lot differently. And it's got obviously Apollo training Rocky to fight Clubber Lang, and Clubber Lang is so good. He's just such a good bad guy. And this movie's also got Mickey's death. It's got Rocky kind of going soft, and then he's training, to get back the eye of the tiger, and that song, for crying out loud. Oh my God, it's so good. So I used to watch this movie over and over when I was a kid, and it was a blast to go back with my son and watch it again, and it made me realize how much I really liked this movie a lot. So I really like this movie a lot. So yeah, Rocky 3 clocks in at number 3 for me, my friend. So
nice.
You like that?
Yeah, honestly, I had this on my list for a little while. It was flipping between Rocky 3 and Creed 3 just to try and get something a little newer on there because I thought, they were both great films. But I was going to put Rocky 3 on here, but I was fairly confident that it was going to make your list. So I thought, you know what, I'll just step out of your way and I'll find something else that I can throw out there. And I ended up putting Die Hard on there instead.
There you go. There we go. That was a good replacement. Okay, what's your number 2?
All right, this is going to be, again, an odd pick that people are probably not going to expect. Mm-hmm. And again, from a film series that ended up making a lot of these movies, but this was definitely not conceived of as a direct sequel or a part of the trilogy. And this is the third Predator movie, which was just called Predators with an S on the end. And I think that this, in my opinion, this one is, I don't want to say as good as the first one, because the first one was good for its own reasons, but this one I felt was very strong as well, because it's a much tighter, much more sophisticated sort of action science fiction movie. I assume you have not seen this one?
No, and in fact, just to steal your line, I learned a new thing today. I didn't know that there was a third one. I remember there was Predator, obviously it was great, and then Predator 2, which was dumb. I thought they ended it at that. I didn't even know they did.
Oh no, there's been like 6 movies in this thing.
Oh no, yeah. I remember there was Alien versus Predator. I remember there was that. I don't know if that really counted, but I didn't know they made a third one. Predators. Oh my god, yeah. It's like Anacondas or Twisters.
Yes, something like that.
Aliens.
Yeah, exactly. So the basically the way this one starts out is these what do they call them? They're like mercenaries. It's a not too distant future. They wake up in these like metal boxes and they open them up and they realize that like they've been parachuted down onto this alien planet, and you see they've got like guns and survival gear and like camo jackets, and you're like, oh, these guys mean business, like they're special forces or something. But they don't know each other, but they all realize like, hey, we're here to do something. And so like for the first part of the movie, as we get to know the characters, they get to know each other. So it's like there's this sort of mystery about like, well, who are all these people and why are they all here? And then I'm going to spoil a little bit. One of the things that you eventually realize is that they're all hardcore criminals. And much like my Alien 3 premise, they're all prisoners. They've been sent to this planet as an execution sentence. Like they've been sent here because the powers that be know that these predator monsters live on this planet. And so then you have this sort of combination of them being mistrustful of each other as they start to realize like, hey, we're all criminals and none of us have any idea why any of us are actually here. And then at the same time, they're trying to fight the predators. And it's just this combination of this slasher action film with the predators coming in and the guns and all that stuff. But it's also at the same time a little bit of a mind thriller where it's like, who are these characters and like what are their stories? Why are they here? Should I trust this guy? Am I supposed to like this character looks like Adrian Brody is a star. He's like, am I supposed to cheer for him? Because now that I know he's a criminal, like what is he here for? And so it's this interesting exercise when you watch it, because you're not really sure. It's like, do I just cheer for the predators to kill them all? And but no, it was really good. I remember seeing this in the theater with my wife and we're like, man, this movie might suck. And we both came out and went like, wow, that was really good. It was really good. And the cast had a pretty decent cast too. It's Adrian Brody, Lawrence Fishburne, Topher Grace, Danny Trejo, the guy Walter Goggins, who recently appeared in the Fallout series, is the guy with no nose. He's you're gonna recognize him. Mahershala Ali, like this. There's a lot of people in this movie when you're watching it, and you're like, oh my god, I know that person. I know that person. And this was a pretty decent installment. So my number 2 pick is the Predators movie from 2010, which is the third installment in this franchise.
Very good. There you go. So I mentioned a couple movies that I made my son watch, but here's one. I'm going to flip things on its head a little bit. My number 2 is one that I watch because of my kids. So I watch a lot of movies because of them, and usually, I'll be honest, they usually suck. But every once in a while, there's one that's good, sometimes even great. And this one here is definitely great. That's Toy Story 3. So I watched the first 2 Toy Story movies with my kids, and they were both okay. They were just okay for me, But the third one, oh my God, this is a really, really good movie. It came out in 2010. And I remember at the time, a lot of people were saying, oh, this is like the best animated film of the year. I'm like, I think it's the best film of the year, period. I think this one hit hard for me because it appeals more to adults, I think, than it does to kids, because, who didn't have toys that they loved when they were kids? And, unlike our kids watching the movie, we've already grown up. We've moved past our toys for the most part, except for nerds like me and you, I guess, Derek. But that whole idea of like growing up and moving on, like we all go through it. And I think at the end, when you see the little girl, she gets the toys and the whole cycle starts over again. Mm-hmm. It's a pretty amazing theme. So it hits home. I thought it was really good. And not only that, it's a great movie. Like, there's tons of action in it. That whole scene in the dump when they're going to die and there's the rescue and everything. It's a great movie. Hands down, best movie in the series, and even just as a standalone movie, it's really, really, really good. So Toy Story 3 is my number 2. Oh,
that's a solid pick. That was one where I was a little on the fence about, like, did that fall into the third part franchise? But I don't think obviously when the first one came out they thought it was going to be anywhere near the success that it was. So they certainly weren't conceiving it as a trilogy.
It was like one of their first movies Pixar did, and they've since made Toy Story 4. And I remember thinking, why? It was perfect. Toy Story 3 was perfect. Just end it.
Because there's money, money on the table.
I understand.
And Toy Story 5, they're making Toy Story 5 right now.
I understand, but it sucks. It sucks because it taints the series. Because
it does.
3 was perfect, so just let it be. So
yeah.
All right, you're number 1.
Maybe that's why I didn't pick Toy Story 3, because I felt that with Toy Story 4, it almost hurt Toy Story 3.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so I have to just go with the easy answer for my number 1 pick here. So we're going to talk Marvel.
Okay. Yes. I thought maybe you were going to take mine, but that's right. You really like Marvel. So,
you want to talk third installments. Mm-hmm. You want to talk part 3s. You want to talk franchises with sequels. Like, Marvel takes the cake in every permutation of this you can think of. And a lot of their films have actually had 3 or more parts. So there's a lot to choose from. And one of the things with Marvel is, by the time they got to part 3 for most of these franchises, they really knew what they were doing. It was really hitting its stride. And so, the ones that I didn't pick, like the recent Spider-Man No Way Home, the third one in that, solid, A+. The Avengers Infinity War, I mean, that technically is the third Avengers movie. Like, again, you could argue that's one of the best movies of the last 20 years, certainly one of the most financially successful movies. Thor Ragnarok, I mean, after the second Thor movie, everyone thought, wow, Thor movie's going to suck. And then this third one came out and blew people's minds. Like, it was so good. But the one I'm going to go with is, I think, a fair, everyone's pick, if you had to ask for a part 3 in a comic book movies, it's Captain America Civil War. I think of all the Marvel movies that they've made so far, this is definitely in my top 3. Don't know if it's my number 1, but it's probably the one I've seen the most, and it's the one I'm constantly going back to. People joke about it and they say, well, it's not really Captain America Part 3, it's more Avengers, 2.5, because it features almost all of the heroes that go on to be in the Avengers movie. There's that huge scene at the airport where they all fight each other, and it's just like, oh my God. But the story is great, the character development is great. Special effects, I mean, again, Marvel knows how to do a special effects movie. There's just so much to like about it. And this, I think the 3 Captain America films they put out so far, again, some of the best comic book movies, because they're not really comic book movies. They're really, stories about these characters. It's more of a character study, and it just happens that some of them have superpowers. And I think that's why so many of the Marvel movies work, is they don't focus on the fact that, oh, this guy can fly, or this guy, has a magic ring that gives him powers and stuff. They focus on the character first. And this one, more than any of the other ones, like, they really dive into that story of who is Captain America, who would he be all these years later, with his what was he? They were fighting Nazis, right? So it would have been World War II. And, with his 1930s, 1940s sensibility, but in today's world, like, how did those values carry forward? And the people that he surrounds himself with, and the reasons they're fighting, it's this sort of new ideas versus old ideas. But again, the action of it all, the comic books of it all, the storytelling, there's just so much to like about this movie. So I think this was an easy one for me. When you said we're talking about third picks, this is immediately the first one that I thought, I'm definitely going here. So Captain America Civil War, it's the third Captain America film in the Marvel Universe. This is my number 1 pick.
All right, my number 1, you could probably guess. What do you think of my number 1?
I'm guessing it's probably part of a famous trilogy, which is why I knew that we weren't going to overlap.
Yes, it's Return of the Jedi. No big surprise.
Shocking. I'm
surprise. A huge fan of the original trilogy, like massive fan. We all know that. And yes, I'm one of those guys that doesn't like anything else related to Star Wars. So, it is like, I don't like the prequels or the sequels or the expanded universe or whatever the hell you call it. I think it's all pretty much crap. But the third installment is great. And, although since Lucas went and started putting these stupid numbers in front of everything, and he said it started with 4. Who knows what the third installment is actually supposed to be in this series? I don't know. But to me, I'm old school. It's Return of the Jedi. And I want to say too that it's the original theatrical release that I like, because for me, the very end when Luke looks into the forest and he sees Ben and Yoda and Darth Vader, but it's Sebastian Shaw. That's an amazing ending. To me, that felt like when I first saw it, I was like, that is like the cherry on top of just a perfect trilogy story. Like, it was just so good. And then, of course, Lucas had to go and superimpose scowling Hayden Christensen over everything. I'm just a grumpy old man. What can I say? But Return of the Jedi, I think, is the best third installment in movie history. I don't know. That's my take. That's me.
Yeah, it's a strong pick. That's a hard one to argue against.
Yeah.
I think people of a certain age, people of our age, that's going to be the other one that I'm surprised didn't make either of our lists was Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which again we've talked about on a number of our podcasts. It's hit a lot of our lists in the past, so I felt that one we could give a pass to. So,
and I think the reason I pass on, I love the original Raiders so much. The second one is like, okay, it's kind of campy or whatever. It's not the same as the first one. And the third one I've only ever seen once. I went to see it in the movie theater, and I think I remember thinking it was quite good, but I've never seen it again since. For whatever reason. Wow. I don't know why. So that one just doesn't have that nostalgia for me, like that I've watched it over and over sort of thing. So that's probably why I left it off. Again, going back to Lucas, because you mentioned something at the beginning. You were like, I don't want to pick a third installment of something that was conceived of as a trilogy. I'm telling you, the hill I will die on is that Star Wars was never conceived as a trilogy. It was a one story that he did, became super, super successful, so he made a sequel. When the working title of the second movie was Star Wars 2, okay? So he goes on and on, all this, like, you've seen all these documentaries on Lucas, like, oh, I had this bigger script, this bigger idea of a story. Guess what? That's every movie that's ever made has a big script, and you pare it down. So, I mean, just, so I always thought that, Return of the Jedi was never conceived as a trilogy originally, so that's why it made my list, going on the parameters that you were mentioning.
But let me just sort of clarify that then. So part of my thought also was I'm going to use Back to the Future as an example. I think it's sort of the same idea. They had part one, it was a huge success, and then they're like, what are we going to do next? And instead of just saying we're going to make a sequel, they were like, well, let's create a story that's going to span two films. And I got to believe that for Empire and Jedi, that was sort of the same idea. It was like, well, if we're going to do this, let's. And so again, that to sort of caveat or to sort of edit what I said at the beginning, I agree. I don't necessarily think these films were conceived of as a trilogy, but I think by the time they were ready to make part two, they knew we're going to do a part 2 and a part 3. And to me, that was why I tried to stay away from some of those, because it's like, well, you really sort of getting 2 bites at the apple here. But I'm not saying that some of these part 3s are not excellent. Like Raiders is excellent, or Return of the Jedi is excellent. Back to the Future 3, not so much. That's why it didn't make my list. But yeah, that was sort of my personal guidelines. But no, I'm glad I made the list. Honestly, I would have been shocked if you had anything on there. I was a little surprised you didn't have Jaws 3D on your list, but you got Porky's. That makes
okay. So let's go back a little bit. I love Jaws. We know that. Jaws 2 I even thought was pretty good. But Jaws 3 I went to see in the movie theater. That was in 1983 when the whole 3D craze was going on. And not only did they have the craze of 3D movies, but it seemed to be a thing to have the third installment in movies as 3D. Like there was Jaws 3 in 3D, Amityville 3 in 3D. There was Friday the 13th Part 3 in 3D. It was just a thing. And they've since rebranded Jaws, because you even mentioned, you called it Jaws 3D. It's not Jaws 3D. Jaws 3D implies that it's the first film in 3D. That movie is called Jaws 3 in 3D. Then after it came out, they rebranded, because it was so crappy that they tried to rebrand it to make more people think, oh, it's just Jaws in 3D. Then maybe more people will actually watch this thing, But it was.
Can you imagine how disappointed you'd be if that was you're like, all right, I'm going to see some 3D, and you're like, wait, I paid how much for what?
No, it's not very good. And I mean, Lou Gossett Jr. is great. He's in it. Even though it's got Bess Armstrong, who I have a lifelong crush on Bess Armstrong. I will watch her in anything. And even still, it's not very good. I mean, Leah Thompson was in it too, and I always liked her, but I mean, in SeaWorld and stuff, I guess the idea of it's cool. I guess the other thing with it is, not to dwell on this, Jaws, but the timeline of these kids always got me. Like how old they were in the first movie, and then if you look at how old they are in the second movie, It doesn't jive. And then the third one, now they're like, what? Like 30? And the whole thing was just weird. So, no, it didn't make it. Sorry. That's my rant on Jaws 3 in 3D. Okay, let's have some
fun with Caveman.
Derek, we have a new game I'd like to debut around here. Okay?
All right, lay it on me.
It's called Name the Tagline, and we even have a song.
Name the tagline. Name the tagline. Name the tagline. Name the tagline.
Our producer found someone with a really bad falsetto to do that drop for
Well,
us.
I wish I could remember what this game was called. Like,
We tend to repeat it a lot. Okay, so here's how it works. Movies, as you know, have taglines. They're right there on the movie poster, right? Mm-hmm. Some movie taglines have become as famous as the movie titles themselves. You know?
Sure.
Like if I was to say the tagline was, "In space, no one can hear you scream."
yeah, that was Alien. That was exactly the example I was going to use.
Exactly.
Yeah, good call.
You know,
man.
like it's like so famous. You know what the tagline is. So easy, right? This game's super easy.
Well, in theory.
Since we're doing third installments this week, all of the movie taglines come from movies that are the third installment.
Okay,
so it's easy, right? With most of these we've already even done.
I was going to say,
today
you
on the
probably stepped
podcast.
on a lot of it during the show.
Which is fine.
Okay.
You just got to put the tagline with it. So I'm going to give you the movie tagline, and you just give me the movie title. Super easy one to start with. Return to a galaxy far, far away.
Well, it's got to be Return of the Jedi.
Of course it is. Another easy one for you. No toy gets left behind.
Oh, that'd be Toy Story 3.
This is simple, okay?
Are we just doing all the movies on your list?
No, here's one.
I wasn't writing them down.
Here's one. Now that you've survived the holidays, you deserve a vacation. You'll crack up.
Oh, was that the... I almost put this on my list. That was National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
You're going to get a lot of these. No hammer, no problem.
Oh, that was Thor. Thor Ragnarok.
All right, this one's an easy one for you. Whose side are you on? United we stand, divided we fall.
Well, it's got to be my number one pick. It's got to be the Captain America Civil War.
He's back in an all-new adventure.
He's back in an all-new adventure. Well, it's got to be an Arnold Schwarzenegger film. I'm trying to think. Did he do anything other than Terminator? Let's just say Terminator 3.
No, it's Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Oh, I was going down the wrong plane. Oh, okay, I was going down the wrong road. Okay.
All right. At the end of the world, the adventure begins.
End of the world, the adventure begins. And it's a third part?
Yep.
Jeez, I have no idea.
Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Every hero has a choice to face the darkness or be consumed by it. The greatest battle lies within.
I was gotta say that's gotta be one of the comic book movies. Maybe it's Batman. Maybe it's what's that? The third one, the Nolan one was Batman. Oh my God, I can't think of it. I don't know.
Spider-Man 3.
Oh, it's just straight up Spider-Man 3.
Yep.
Okay.
An entire universe, once and for all. Destiny arrives.
Oh, that's got to be Avengers Endgame.
Oh, no.
No, Infinity War. Sorry.
Infinity War is correct.
Yeah.
Okay. This one is going to test your knowledge. It's a little going back a couple years, okay? But it's a good one. It's one of the best threes ever made, and I didn't put it on my list, but The Man with No Name returns. If you know the film, you'll know it right away. The Man with No Name returns.
I have no idea.
It's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
That was a part 3?
Oh, yeah. From A Fistful of Dollars, Few Dollars More, and Good, Bad, and the Ugly.
Oh, yeah. I've never seen it. I don't know.
One of the best spaghetti westerns ever made. Okay, this one you'll get. The eye of the enemy is moving.
Oh, that's got to be the third Lord of the Rings. That was Return of the King. Lord of the Rings.
Got it. All right. He's a 20th century guy trapped in the Middle Ages.
Oh, is that Back to the Future Part 3?
Army of Darkness.
That was a Part 3?
Yes. Evil Dead 2, and Army of Darkness.
Oh, see, I had no idea.
Don't hunt what you can't kill. Every action has consequences.
I'm just going to go with Predators. I have no idea.
No, it's John Wick, Chapter 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I thought you might get that one. I don't know it.
I've seen it, but I had no idea that was the tagline.
Okay, this one I don't know. This one I think you're going to get, but it's kind of tough too. His time has come.
Okay. I'm going to go back to the Future Part 3.
It's one that we just reviewed recently, Logan.
Oh, Logan, okay.
Yeah. They've saved the best trip for last, but this time they may have gone too far.
Wow.
You've used it numerous times and it's been wrong.
Back to the Future Part 3.
Yes! All right. See, you did pretty good on that, though. Some of them were tough. I started off easy, and then I got a little bit tougher. But no, I thought you did pretty good in those. A lot of fun.
Yeah, okay. Some of them were a little tougher because they didn't really, the tagline didn't necessarily tie in directly. You to really know what the movie was about.
Exactly. But I got to make, I can't give you softballs on every single one of them. I mean, come on. Okay, so next time, it's time for a movie review, Derek. It's my turn to nominate a movie. As you know, I only pick old movies. Nothing's going to change this time around. That's just my thing. So, and another thing that's no surprise is I like 80s comedies. I especially like the raunchy ones. Here's the thing.
Are we going to watch the third Porky's movie?
No.
I've never seen it.
I won't make you do that.
Okay.
Here's the thing, Derek. Everybody loves Tom Hanks, right? And to an entire generation of millennials, he's a serious actor with 6 Oscar nominations and 2 wins, Mm-hmm. But if you want to go back to when he was a comedic actor. His first ever appearance in a motion picture was actually in He Knows You're Alone in 1980. So we're not going to do that one because then he appeared in Splash in 84. But no, it's his other movie from 1984 that I want us to go back and review, Bachelor Party.
Oh, okay. I've never seen it.
Oh, God. That's awesome. It's streaming on Disney Plus, readily available for anyone to watch. I cannot believe you have not seen Bachelor Party. This is going to be interesting because, you're obviously very familiar with Tom Hanks' work, his later work, very, very critically acclaimed and stuff. Interesting to see what your take is to see him in an absolute raunchy comedy from 1984.
All right.
I hope you're going to like it. It's something I haven't seen it in years, so it's going to be interesting how it holds up. But we are going to watch Bachelor Party, and we're going to come back and review it next time here on the podcast. But until then, I'm Chris McBrien. You're Derek Myers, and we both want to say thanks for taking the time to listen to Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations.
Thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World. You can contact Chris and Derek at popgoesyourworld.com. Please take a minute and review the podcast on iTunes or wherever you download and listen to the show.